Well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Once again, my name is Ben Jacobs from 7 League. We've got a great panel coming up for the next 40 minutes or so before we allow you to break for lunch and some shawarma and burritos in the van outside. We're going to be talking about the social impact in sport, specifically focusing on the Premier League, but extending it as well to other US sports, and in particular, the Tampa Bay Lightning. We've also got representation from EverFi as well, who make a lot of the software that we're going to be talking about. So let's introduce our panel, and then we'll be starting with a video before we kick off debate. Once again, we remind you to be very interactive. Our panelists will be debating amongst themselves, but if you have a question during the course of the panel, make sure that you stick up your hands, and I will take questions at the end as well. So we have panel here to my left-hand side, Tim Vine from the Premier League. We also have representation from Tampa Bay Lightning in the form of Jay Feaster. And right at the end here, we have Brian Cooley from EverFi, the technology company that are making a lot of the projects that we'll be talking about. Now, the social impact of sport can be seen in two ways. We have actual social, which is making an impact on the community, specifically in this context in schools, and then social, if you like, in inverted commas, in the sense of digital, and that is the mechanism to reach a lot of the kids within the schools that we'll be talking about over the next 40 minutes or so. Premier League Primary Stars is our main in point, if you like, but as I alluded to earlier, we will be talking about other sports as well. So before we get underway and hear from the panel one by one, let's have a look at exactly what Premier League Primary Stars is in a bit more detail. And to do that, if you turn your attention to the screen behind me, we can watch a brief video to kick things off.
This is a lesson you should heed.
Try again.
If at first you don't succeed,
Try again.
Then your courage should appear.
For if you will persevere,
you will conquer, never fear.
Try again. If we strive, it's no disgrace.
Though we may not win the race.
What should you do in this case?
Try again.
All that other folks can do.
Why with patience should not you? Only keep this rule in view.
Try again. Yes.
We're helping to inspire primary school kids in everything from maths and English to teamwork and sport. Search Premier League Primary Stars to get your school involved.
Great stuff. Tim Vine from the Premier League. First of all, it said try again, and if I was tasked with trying to backflick a ball into a basketball net, it would be try, and we've long beyond this session before I got anywhere close. That was a brilliant video that you put together. Give us an overview as to what Premier League Primary Stars is.
Sure, thanks, Ben. I'm sure all of us here in the room agree that sport has a huge role in a social context. We can change people's lives using their interest in football and other sports. And our clubs, Premier League clubs and English Football League clubs, have been delivering a range of community work in and out of schools for many years. But 3 years ago, we took the view that we wanted to build a new umbrella brand for this work. So Premier League Primary Stars was born. What made it, I think, unique was that we wanted to take this program out of just the geographical surrounds of our Premier League clubs. We wanted to give schools right across the country, right across England and Wales, a chance to get involved. So we built a website and allowed teachers to access resources, as the advert said, to teach English, maths, PE, and a range of other sort of character development, social skills via this free resources on this website. So it grew very fast. We've gone in 3 years into now just shy of 17,000 primary schools across England and Wales. We've got over 100 professional clubs involved in delivering it on the ground, so actually going into schools and training up teachers and delivering working class. So that's right through the Premier League, the English Football League, and even into the sort of 5th and 6th tiers of English football. So it's really had an impact way beyond what we could have imagined, and I think the future for it is extremely bright as well.
Brian, EverFi are a partner for this project, but you also extend to other sports as well, and we'll touch on that with Jay in just a moment. Tell us a little bit about your role in this project, and perhaps more broadly, what EverFi do for those unaware of the company's remit.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks for everybody for being here today. So EverFi is a digital education company. We're based in Washington, D.C. We've been around for about 12 years, and really our goal, our mission, is to partner with the private sector to bring skills offerings into schools. So we focus on topics that are seldomly covered in school curriculum, so financial education, STEM education, diversity and inclusion, social and emotional learning, and really a focus is how can we bring these tools, learning tools, which are digital in nature, into schools to help students build really the skills that they need to be successful in life. And so we've been very fortunate to partner with Tim and the Premier League over the past couple years now. We actually have deployed the Primary Stars program in the United States. We're now active in about 7 markets. And beyond soccer, we're very fortunate also to work very closely. We run the official education program for the National Hockey League, work very closely with Jay. We also do the same thing for the National Basketball Association, as well as Major League Baseball and the NFL.
So Jay, tell us a little bit outside of, and forgive me, I know we're at Soccerex in America, but I'm going to call it outside of football rather than soccer. It's just a British force of habit. I'm sure Tim will be the same as well. But outside of our football, if you like, tell me about your partnership with EverFi and how it benefits Tampa Bay Lightning.
Sure. We've been working with EverFi now for 6 years. And essentially what EverFi does, EverFi helps us get into schools. And one of the things that we recognized very early is that when you think about a place such as sunny Florida, the sport of ice hockey is not hardwired into youngsters' DNA the way other sports, for example, football. That's just not the case with hockey. And so we discovered that in order for us to make an impact and to grow the game, grow the sport, that we had to have a way to get into the schools. We had to find a way to teach hockey within schools. And EverFi has given us that opportunity. EverFi makes those contacts with the school districts. And again, the program that we're using right now is something that's called Future Goals Hockey Scholar. And essentially what that does, it is a program that utilizes hockey themes, hockey concepts, in order to help teach STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. It's unique to all 31 markets, soon to be 32, so that the program is skinned with the logo of each team, whichever team is using it. But it's an opportunity for the kids to actually be learning hockey at the same time that they're learning science, technology, engineering, and math. We've added a physical education component to that, to put street hockey sticks and balls in kids' hands, because we don't have enough sheets of ice. But again, plenty of beautiful weather and plenty of flat surfaces. We could get a street hockey game going out here in the lobby if we wanted to. So that's the concept, and that's how we work with EverFi.
So to all of you, what's the end goal here in your opinion? And I appreciate there may be multiple. Are you trying to use sport as a vehicle to educate? Are you trying to encourage participation? Are you trying to market to, in your case, 5 to 11s, and in your case, slightly older demographics? Are you trying to tap into the parents as well? What do you think the main strategic end goal is of actually doing these type of projects in the first place?
Well, I mean, if I take that one first, I think it's all 3, 4, 5, however many you mentioned. You know, there are multiple goals to these sort of programs, and I think that's the joy of them. We've got a chance to really make a difference in schools. The feedback we're getting from teachers is that children that they found incredibly difficult to engage on subjects such as maths and so forth are suddenly finding that because they're learning using Arsenal players, Chelsea players, Manchester United players, kids who just did not engage are suddenly fully involved, and they're going home and talking to their parents about it, and it's having a real impact on their academic performance. Yes, of course, you know, we're not naive enough to know that there isn't obviously an aim to ensure that young people who are interested in football get into the Premier League and stay engaged with the Premier League. And I think particularly here in the US, where we're fighting in a situation whereby there are a number of more established sports, NHL included, you know, we need to be hopefully the organisation that if a kid is going to get into football, that they're going to want to follow a Premier League club. They want to get their mum and dad to turn on NBC Sports on a Saturday morning and start watching the games. That is a wonderful bifactor of the program, and you know, I'm not going to be ashamed to say that. So yeah, it's got multiple aims and objectives.
It's in our case, it's the whole rationale and reason that the community hockey department exists is to increase participation in and awareness of the sport. And that's really what this is all about for us, that we want to be able to take the game to young people who otherwise would not have that opportunity. We have a program that we call Equip the Thunder. And basically, we go out into the PE classes in the area schools, and we teach street hockey. We take our bumper pads so that we build a little rink. We take them through skills drills, and then we save time at the end, and we do a little scrimmage. But the important part about that is that we have visited in excess of 500 schools over the past 5 years, and 61% of those schools are Title I schools, where a majority of the students qualify for free or reduced price lunches. So we're not going out into affluent areas necessarily. And that's the great part about what we're doing, and that's why we do it, is that, again, we want to expose diverse markets to the game and simply make young people aware. And as Tim said, we know that along the way, because of what we're doing, and as they interact with players and Lightning alumni, they will become fans. None of them may decide to play ice hockey, some may. And none of them may at some point be able to buy season tickets for the Lightning. But at some level, they are fans. They're watching the games, they're buying the t-shirt or the hat. They are engaged, and that's really why we do what we do.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I would say that two important things. One of them is it starts with education, and it starts with delivering something of value to students, and I think it's doing it in a fun, measurable, and trackable way. And so in your case, Jay, if a young student can learn about the importance of math and science in terms of future career opportunity using the game of hockey as a learning vehicle, learning about friction, learning about probability, thermodynamics, and things like that, there's something really positive and fun. And hopefully we've created some lifelong fans of the Tampa Bay Lightning and the NHL. In the case of the Premier League, it's really going after some of those skills that are really needed. So compassion at a young age, helping students really thinking about being empathetic towards one another. The other thing I would say is digital citizenship. So students are sort of cast out into the world at the age of 13 onto the internet, and there's not really a rule book or a code of conduct. And so one of the things that we're trying to do, along with the Premier League, is really help them think about making smart decisions around cyberbullying, around privacy, around relying on news sources and things like that. And again, the idea is, can we make it fun? Can we make it interactive? And then also, because it is digital, can we track it? Can we understand that the education is actually having an impact? That's been really important for us.
And I was just going to just build on what Brian was saying there. I think that getting young people interested, in our case, in football here in the States, is actually good for all organizations involved in football. It's not just about the Premier League. If we've got young people in schools suddenly excited in soccer through delivering, a Manchester United or Liverpool themed program, if they want to then get a ball and go and join a local club and get involved in the system, that's going to be good for US soccer too. So I think there is multiple opportunities, and we've always been willing to collaborate wherever we go to ensure that where we start programs like this, there is an impact locally as well as back for us. And I mean, for example, we're looking at taking it into India, where exactly that opportunity will be there too. Getting young people in India excited in football and getting out and playing it locally is a massive byfactor of what we're doing.
Jay, Tim mentioned that practical benefit where you can start digital, you can start with education, and it can end up actually teaching someone the game and having them start at grassroots level. Your program already has actual sticks and balls involved in it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, again, our program is, it's called Build the Thunder, and it has 6 different levels to it, but the real driver is what we call Equip the Thunder. And what we said is that over a 5-year period, we would visit 500 middle schools, and we would donate a complete set of street hockey gear to those schools. So 40 sticks, a pair of goals, 36 balls, protective equipment for the goalies, 2 sets, reversible pennies with our logo on. The whole idea being that they can continue to play long after we're gone, after we're not doing the clinic. But again, we go into those schools, we take over the PE class, we do the clinic the entire day, and what we do is that every student who interacts with us, they leave, they take home their very own Lightning logo street hockey stick and ball. So imagine they get in the car line and they open the car door and Mom and Dad, look what I got. And at the same time, they're interacting with Lightning alumni. They take home an autograph card from that alumni, and we actually used 2 guys who, one was part of our Stanley Cup championship team, another was a Stanley Cup champion with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So they're getting to rub elbows with those former athletes. And then we also do a BOGO. We do a buy one, get one offer for a select tranche of games. But just to follow on what Tim had said too, in terms of what happens within the community, what we have found is, as a result of our Build the Thunder program, that as we grow the game and as we grow participation, more kids playing youth hockey, registering with USA Hockey, all of a sudden we found private investment that people are either looking to build ice rinks or add sheets of ice to existing ice rinks. And that's a game changer for us.
Tim, talk to me about some of the challenges taking this concept, which is inevitably going to be popular and beneficial in the United Kingdom, even much of Europe. Then you come to America, where suddenly kids and schools are probably saying, with all due respect to the Premier League and most other sports, we want Brady, we want LeBron to be teaching us this, as opposed to, why not Jamie Vardy?
Yeah, you're showing your Leicester City roots there. I like that. No, I mean, look, we were very lucky to meet a partner like EverFi and have their bank of experience of working with other sports. I think a point we should stress here is we aren't creating resources that we think might work in schools. These are resources that have been checked to match against the curriculum. EverFi have a bank of educational experts creating these resources to ensure they meet the educational outcomes and needs of schools. So, their expertise has definitely helped. It is a slight leap into the dark, and you're right. We are down the charts when it comes to popularity of sport. We accept that, but it is an easy game to get into. As Jay mentioned, the lack of ice down here in sunny Florida presents a challenge. You can pick up a football and play pretty much anywhere. Going back to the old thing of jumpers for goalposts, you can pretty much lay down a pitch and play wherever you want. So we do have the benefit of that. And no, I think there's huge opportunity here in the States for a program of this sort.
Right, I would totally agree. As the conference over the past couple days would attest, soccer has never been in a better place in the United States. I think it is exploding. Fan relationships are being developed on a daily basis. And so one of the things that we're incredibly excited about is bringing the Premier League and the clubs into schools. We were actually in Austin, Texas a couple weeks ago, and Sean Wright-Phillips, who's a legend from Man City, brought him in, brought the trophy in, introduced students to that. And as Americans, I think that one of the things that is common of American sports fan behavior is we can be fans of multiple teams across multiple sports, and perhaps that's not the case if you're a Liverpool fan. You might not watch La Liga as an example, or you might not watch the NFL. But I think that there's opportunities for multiple pockets of fandom, and I think students to be able to hear, whether it's virtually or in person, from some of these folks who've played the game, if they can impart some knowledge, some encouragement, some wisdom, I think it makes a really interesting connection. And on the digital piece, because the Premier League obviously plays in the UK and does not play except during the summers periodically in the United States, the challenge we have is we can't necessarily ring up Mo Salah and have him come into a school in New York City, but what we can do is actually virtually beam him into 50, 60 schools simultaneously using a webinar sort of a format whereby he can sit in front of a green screen and he can actually talk to students and share knowledge on things like his diet, his preparation, his mental sort of wellness tactics before going into a game. All things that can be really helpful for young and impressionable students.
To that point, Jay, the Premier League and a technology company will have a lot to balance. When you back this directly as an individual club, you presumably know your audience better, the community around them, and you have excellent access to players and resources. How have you been able to utilize the assets available to you in your community when not facing a challenge of internationalization or the challenge of being a league as opposed to an individual club?
I think one of the real important things, and this is we're able to utilize the EverFi programming because the league backs it. It makes such a difference because having the league back it really, just from a financial standpoint, and then to be able to customize it within your market is what makes it an excellent program for us. We were fortunate enough in that when we started working with EverFi 6 years ago, and back then we were doing the digital literacy program really as an introduction in our marketplace because Future Goals Hockey Scholar hadn't been developed yet. It hadn't been finalized, all the modules. But we actually decided that we were going to work with one of our current players who is a graduate of Harvard University, Alex Killorn. And fortunately, he's a very good player. He's not a fourth-line guy who doesn't see a whole lot of ice time. He is a very, very good player. And again, he didn't just attend Harvard and play ice hockey in college. He is a Harvard grad. And so to be able to have him go out into the classroom with us and be there in the classroom with the kids, with the teachers, while they're working on the Future Goals programs, and have him talk about the importance of education, it's really a key to what we do. Because we recognize that none of our programs are designed to create the next first-round draft pick. And that just isn't the purpose of the program. But to have a professional player there and a high-profile player who, in fact, is a grad of Harvard and who can talk about the importance of academics, that's a game changer with the kids.
Yeah.
I suppose to all of you, how did you go about and still do go about understanding that, in your case, 5 to 11 audience? Because when you look at a 5-year-old, first of all, they'll change their mind about what digital platforms they want to consume very quickly. They may not even be digitally savvy in the first place. The school may have to teach them how to use an iPad. Their parents may not want them carrying a mobile phone. They won't have developed necessarily what passion, whether arts or science, they want to go down. And of course, you are in keeping with the curriculum. But how, from a technology point of view, from a club point of view, and from a league point of view, do you ensure that you are up to date with an audience understanding of a very difficult demographic, 5 to 11?
Sure. Well, one of the great developments, if we look over the past 10 years, the amount of, and many of you may have children or know of students who are in school, the adoption of technology is at an all-time high. It used to be that in some of the most challenged schools, the Title I schools with the highest level of free and reduced lunch, that access to technology was not nearly as high. I think we have crossed that gap in many, many ways, whether it's a laptop cart, whether it is a computer lab. And so the nice thing about a digital platform is, and we build everything so that it maps to curriculum standards. So a teacher who really, that's the center of our universe, really supporting teachers, supporting communities. We can help a teacher understand how one of these courses, whether it be on STEM technology or on compassion as an example, how it actually maps back to the requirements that they're held accountable to. So it really is helping teachers deliver on their mission. It's also trackable, it's measurable, it's broken into sort of bite-sized segments whereby students, whether it's on a smartboard in front of the entire classroom, or if it's in an individual environment where a student is actually taking these modules home, they can actually complete them. And they're fun, they're engaging, they include video content, and just so you guys have a better perspective, sort of, it's almost like an EA Sports experience, but for academic learning. And so we're testing knowledge throughout the course. And the idea is also that we're doing it in a way that is safe for students. So ensuring that we are COPPA and FERPA for any lawyers or folks who know some of those guidelines, making sure that we're compliant with that, very strong privacy guidelines, and then constantly changing that content and making it interesting and fun for students.
Go on, Jay.
Well, I think the other thing, just to follow on what Brian was saying, again, it's great for teachers because it's a resource that they're able to use at their own pace. They don't have to do it as, let's go through all 11 modules at the same time, and we're going to do it week after week. They can pick and choose, and again, there's no cost to them. That's the best part. When we go into schools and we say we have this program, and here it ties in to all of the educational standards for the state of Florida. Oh, and by the way, there is no cost to you, and you can use it at your own speed and at your own pace. Now all of a sudden we get that buy-in from the teachers. And again, it is fun. I wish that it was something that we had when I was young, because I'd be a whole lot better at math and science if I could have had the kind of lessons that are used in these modules.
Yeah. No, I mean, picking up on your point, Jay, you know, important for us is a feeling that this is working. So feedback from teachers and an understanding of how we want to change and shape the program as it develops and grows is really important. And it's been great to see 93% approval on our UK program in terms of teachers saying that they would recommend the resources to other teachers to use. Going to the point about the technological aspects of it, I mean, the fact that it is a digital program means that as technologies advance, new things come on the market, you know, it's very easy to update and bring it into line with what is out there, what young people are interested in and using. So I think that's a fantastic thing. But it's funny, you know, some of the old school parts of the program are the ones that make the simplest and most effective difference. We got a fantastic email in from a mother of some children in a town called Macclesfield. For those of you that don't know, it's about 20 miles outside Manchester. She said she had 2 children in a primary school that had got involved in Primary Stars, and she'd never seen her kids just so engaged in a project. They were coming home and saying they'd been given a little star certificate for their performance on Primary Stars that day. And their daughter was actually, she had cerebral palsy. She used a walking frame in school, and she'd been given a certificate for her bravery and kind of teamwork and ethics in a class, and it had given her such a lift because she'd apparently not enjoyed taking her walking frame into work. She'd become into school. She'd become very aware of it and was starting to, you know, dislike this thing she had to use. And this really gave her that lift that suddenly she felt confident again. She went back in with this frame, and it really made a difference. And to hear that from a mother who took it upon herself to email us, it puts a smile across the face of the people working on the program.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Brian, what about customization? So one of the things, particularly in the United Kingdom, where we have a smaller geographical space and all the Manchester United fans seem to live in London and outside of Manchester, or you go into a school in Manchester and you get 50% of the classroom that are Manchester City, 50% that are Manchester United, and maybe even if it isn't quite 50-50, 1 or 2 other teams as well. So can you teach the same thing and have each student select their team but still be learning according to a unified curriculum? Could you hypothetically choose to learn, if we talk about the future, your maths from basketball and your English from the Premier League and so on?
Right. Well, having a digital platform makes a lot of that possible. And so what we've built with the NHL, the Future Goals program, is a complete hockey experience. So students who are in 5th and 6th grade, they actually virtually enter into the dressing room, and their challenge is to win the Stanley Cup. And to win the Stanley Cup, they have to go through a series of different challenges. What we're contemplating with the Premier League is you're the manager of a club, and you need to basically challenge your team to go through a series of challenges, whether it's on health and wellness or learning about teamwork and character and things like that. So really, there's an adventure to it. What we can then do is customize it so that if you are an Everton fan, you can sort of click a button and it becomes an Everton experience with characters, players, in fact, or coaches from the Everton club being a part of that experience. One of the things that we've done as a company is we actually focus on about 14 or 15 different content areas. So we started in financial education, and so we partner with about 900 banks and credit unions, and so entrepreneurship and bullying prevention and topics like opioid abuse prevention. So really, any topic that puts pressure on families and communities is one that we want to be a part of. And when you can turn it into a really interesting experience, that includes sports, there's an opportunity, I think, to really spark that fandom moment whereby students realize that this is being brought to them by the Premier League. It's being brought to them by the NFL or the NHL. And there's something really positive about that.
Yeah, and I just wonder, Tim and Jay, following on from that, how important you think it is for big organizations and teams to not forget that grassroots. So the technology is innovative and everybody likes to be able to be at the forefront of the digital world and do something that makes an impact. And constantly we hear words like grassroots or legacy, and I've always personally thought that the Premier League and the NBA with NBA Cares have been very good at not forgetting their grassroots, not forgetting that it isn't just about elite level players, many of whom of course in this context will have missed school and never gone through the education process. So there's a slight irony in the sense that the players teaching maths won't have ever been in that classroom and experienced it firsthand, but they can still kind of input and educate the next generation. How well do you think your organizations and clubs are doing at that grassroots level in not forgetting to be socially conscious?
I think it's a huge, I think it's a huge part of club's ethos, and it's something that we drive home from a Central League perspective. I mean, it's not just about the money, but the fact that our clubs are willing to effectively redistribute £100 million of their own money into grassroots community and education programs every season is a sign of how seriously they take that. And the fact that we can then build programs that work with government agencies, non-government agencies, schools, community organizations, the police. We've got a huge raft of projects that are making a massive social difference on the ground in a wide area, different variety of areas. Our program with the police, just to take it off topic slightly, we run a program called Premier League Kicks, targeting particularly disadvantaged parts of Britain where you're seeing rises in antisocial behaviour and youth crime, and our clubs deliver sessions at times when you would generally be seeing that sort of behaviour. I was going to say, the funny thing is, actually, these programmes, even though they're all about making a difference to those social issues, we've actually seen talent come through these projects that have been missed by the Scads. So the likes of Raheem Sterling was actually found on a Kicks programme, QPR program, Queen's Park Rangers, and was then picked up and moved through the academy system. Marcus Rashford actually started on a Premier League Kicks program in Manchester. So it's strange. It's not a direct desire of these programs, but we're finding talent through them. Wilfred Zaha at Crystal Palace, another one. So it shows that there's actually a good business sense to be doing these programs as well.
Clearly, that's the case. And I honestly believe that it starts at the very top. It starts with ownership. You can have the league support, but if you have a particular owner of an NHL team, for example, and they're not as committed to the program, they're not as committed to the social responsibility, then it's not going to have the same impact. We're very, very fortunate in Tampa because Jeff Vinnick is a big believer in giving back to the community. This is a gentleman that for every home game, he donates $50,000 of his own money. He and his wife, they donate $50,000 at every home game to what they call a community hero. There's a board that selects the community hero based on nominations. And basically the definition for a community hero is that they are doing God's work in the community. And then those recipients, they're highlighted during the game. So they're now up on Lightning Vision on the Jumbotron. There's 20,000 people in the building. And now whatever charities they're going to donate that $50,000 to, now those charities are being highlighted and spotlighted. And this is a guy who has done this since he purchased the team. He's going on 7 years now. And not only does he do it at the home games, but we just played a home game in Sweden, in Stockholm, as part of the NHL International Series. He donated what was our designated home game there. He donated $50,000 to the Swedish Youth Hockey Federation. When the last lockout happened in the National Hockey League, even though we weren't playing, there was no revenue coming in, there had already been a schedule published. And on the dates when we were supposed to play at home, our owner is out there in the community still donating that $50,000 to community heroes. So again, these kinds of programs, they can have a huge impact, but it really does start at the top.
I think you touch on a really interesting point of internationalization, and it's not just teams from America traveling to Europe, matches taking place outside of the league's native home soil. It's also ownership, and in the Premier League, we have a number of cosmopolitan ownership groups from all over the world, including, of course, here in America with Liverpool, Chinese investment in a number of European leagues, Thai investment at my club, Leicester. And by the way, we went on to win the Premier League. Always try and get that into a panel. But as a consequence, when you talk about the Premier League now, when you talk about the NHL and when you're designing things, we're not necessarily only targeting English educational curriculums towards maths and English. Language is surely going to be, if we look forwards about where this might develop, a very big part, because you come to America, you've got a massive Latino-speaking football community that may want to consume the Premier League and may either want that in Spanish or they may want to be taught better English so they can understand the game in what they consider to be the native tongue. So it's not an area, as I understand it, that you've looked at the moment, but going forwards, if we talk about how this program might develop in the Premier League and beyond, do you think teaching language, Spanish, Chinese, and so on, could be a big factor and room to develop?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, and we have actually recently globally expanded. We recently acquired a company called EdComs in London. EdComs is the company actually that was running the Primary Stars program and continues to run the Primary Stars program in the UK. And so for us, we are now thinking about not only translation but localization of different resources. Our particular focus, at least from a technology perspective, has been to not really focus on the core as much as the things that fall through the cracks. So there really is very little happening in the United States around health and wellness, as an example. So teaching kids about making healthy food choices, about exercise, about sleep, the importance of sleep. And so those have been the areas that put pressure on families that we have focused on. But I do think there's an interesting parallel whereby language could become a bigger focus, and possibly for the Premier League.
Yeah, I think for us it definitely could, because with such a rich diversity of player in the Premier League, there's a real opportunity. In fact, Arsenal do have a modern foreign languages program, which is based upon the fact that they, historically have had a large number of French and Spanish, German speakers in the team, and they've created resources that do exactly that: help young people learn a foreign language using Arsenal-related resources. So I'm sure that it's something we could tap into, and I think the idea of bringing that over here and teaching English to those who it is a second language would be a really interesting challenge for the program.
Just a final one from me before I open it up to the floor. We've got about 4 minutes and we will get you to lunch on time. I can assure you that, because my stomach is rumbling more than most. Revenue, the R word that we've not mentioned. This is obviously all about creating a social footprint, educating, doing something for grassroots, and nobody's mistaken that that's the main motivation. And yet there is also the parents, and there are also older kids that will go on to want to spend their own money once they pass the age of probably more like 18, but for you, Jay, you're targeting a much wider demographic to do that. Can you in any way incentivize the process by getting kids to ask their parents to buy stuff? Can you offer rewards? Can you monetize this in any way where perhaps you do a module, you pass it, the parents buy you a shirt or tickets or something, or even use it within the live environment so as to educate and then potentially purchase at the same time? Or are we looking less, for want of a better word, cynically at this project than a revenue-led strategy?
Right. I'd love to take a crack at that one. So I think to be academically credible, you need to have resources that are really driving educational impact in the classroom. And so this is not the goal is not to sell more merchandise or necessarily sell tickets, but it is to actually help students, first of all, with skills that they need. And then number two, can you introduce them to these sports, to these leagues, to these teams in a really positive way where they can develop a relationship? And without a doubt, I mean, when we sit down with Gary Bettman and his team at the NHL, fan development is certainly part of it, and we want to be able to show a likelihood, perhaps, that students are thinking about watching hockey games more. But really, we tend to think of that as a relationship that could mature outside of the academic environment. And again, I think it's interesting for any clubs or other leagues that are considering this. There are many ways to fund a program like this. It can not only be the league itself, it can be the club, it can be a sponsor. So one of the things that is incredibly prevalent in the United States right now is many different brands that you partner with, they want to have some sort of a CSR impact with their program. And so bringing one of those partners along to sort of help to fund a program like this can be really effective, and it can also help them get better integrated into the community.
And I think, too, that if you offer an authentic program, and you offer it for the right reasons, if we do the right things for the right reasons, the goodwill that you engender in the community, it creates fans. There's no question that we sell out. We've sold out over 200 consecutive games in Tampa since Jeff Vinnick bought the team. No question in my mind, yes, it's been a good product on the ice, but it's also because of what he does in the community. And that's huge. Again, doing the right things, being genuine, being authentic, actually caring about the kids and caring about the footprint and the legacy that you leave behind, that does drive fandom. I believe that.
I agree entirely. Absolutely. I mean, we should be doing this work. There'd be an enormous opportunity missed if we didn't get out there and use the appeal of our sports to make a difference in schools. And I actually think you're right, Jay. You know, that fandom and support for the league and a club will come from that. The goodwill that you engender by delivering work like this will ensure that people will stick with a sport and hopefully stick with it for a lifetime.
Great stuff. Well, now we'll see how hungry you really are, because we've got time for a couple of questions, and if no hands go up, we know everyone just wants to go to lunch. But if anyone does have a question for our panel, stick up your hand and do tell us where you're from as well. Going once. Going twice. Stick up your hand if you're hungry and you would like lunch.
I'm in.
Apparently nobody's hungry or wants to ask a question. I think we've got one question here that we can take, and then we will break for lunch. If there are any other questions after this, though, you can speak to the panel afterwards. Please also say your name and where you're from.
Hi, Bethany Henderson from America Scores. And it's really fascinating to hear y'all talk about from the league perspective. We also work with schools. I know working with schools is hard, right? And so I'm curious from the business side, what the challenges are that you find working with schools and what the benefits are.
It is hard. We have a program that we call Guide the Thunder, and it's working with economically disadvantaged middle school students, grades 7 and 8. We spent one entire calendar year, negotiating the terms of the agreement with the district in order to be able to do this program. It's a wonderful program. The district is thrilled. We have received numerous awards and accolades from them, but it is hard. We're doing a program right now where we're working with municipalities to build outdoor ball hockey rinks, and it's the same thing. Trying to get an agreement negotiated, trying to get the permitting, but the reward is, from our perspective, that we really believe it's fundamental to be able to get hockey in front of kids, to get them to learn it while they're in school, or at least to be exposed to it. And so that's the reward, is that we get them where they live and where they're going every day. And we also find that because their teachers are teaching in PE class, they're teaching street hockey, that now all of a sudden kids say, well, this must be important if in fact we have to do it as a lesson plan.
Great stuff. Well, thank you very much for your question, and thank you for listening. We will now break for lunch. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause to our panel, Tim, Jay, and Brian. We'll have our next panel up after lunch. Thank you for attending.